All right, the table just came back from the shop. We had it planed. After the pour, there were some high spots from the resin pour and stuff. So we had that all planed down. So now it's nice and flat. It's level. While I was at the shop, I had them rip the sides. So they went ahead and they cut a straight edge on the sides. The cross cut, I'm just going to do that at home with my skill saw and a straight edge. But you can see the how the table came out after it's been planed. Looks pretty nice. There's a couple of small little pinhole pockets, you know, along the slab. I think there's maybe one right there. One right there. I'm just gonna put a little dab of clear epoxy inside, so that way it'll harden up with some clear epoxy. Everything else came out good. Yeah. All right, so this is what I'm using. I've cut the edges. Everything should be nice and square. The sides were ripped. It's been leveled with the planer. So now I gotta start smoothing this thing out. So this is the game plan. So I'm gonna start with 80 grit. And this is the sand net. So it's kind of like, let me bring these ones so you can kind of see it. So it's sort of a mesh, and it's supposed to help let you use the sandpaper longer, and then it helps with less clogging. Because I guess a lot of the epoxy, when you sand it and stuff, it gets the material really gums up and clogs up the sander. So I'm gonna start with the 80. I'm gonna go up to 120. And then a 180, then a 220, and then right at 220, I'm gonna stop. Well, actually, I'll take it back. Right around 180, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna route the edges. I'm gonna get the router. I'm gonna take a round over a bit and route the edges. And then I'll continue on to the 220. And at 220, I'm gonna stop, and that's when I'm gonna start my first coat of oil. And I'll have a video on that. I'm gonna use Odie's oil. So I'm gonna do the first coat of oil right around 220. I'm gonna start with the bottom, and then I'm gonna end with the top. And I want to do that in the same day. That way, both sides of the grain is oiled, so one side doesn't suck up moisture. I'll let that, once I wipe off the excess, buff it off, wipe it off with a terry cloth towel. Then the next day, after 24 hours, I'm gonna go and sand it with the 320, and then I'll repeat the same process. So we're gonna go ahead and start sanding. What's up, gang? So last night, this is where we're at. Last night I went ahead and I put some fasting cure epoxy. It cures, well, it hardens in about 15 minutes, sandable in a couple of hours. So I just let that thing sit overnight. It was nighttime anyway, so I couldn't really work. So let me show you the epoxy. So right over here I had a little hole there. I did a couple of spots over here where there were some holes. Crack over there. Over here there was a hole. Over there. So all I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and sand this thing down again. I'm gonna get rid of that epoxy on the surface and kind of just resurface it with the sander.